the portion of the show where we talk about a topic.
Yeah.
And we were thinking, there's a topic everybody's been talking about a whole bunch. Cops.
Coppers.
But you know who hasn't been able to talk much about it lately? Cops haven't been talking about, like, everybody I hear talking about it is not cops.
Yeah.
So I was thinking it'd be good to talk to a cop. I was like, do I know any cops? And then there's like this podcast I love called, now this is a Christian podcast, so I have to be careful with the title of this podcast, but I'm pretty sure that we actually just had a guest on with the last name Dick.
Yeah. That's fine.
Well, we're running into this word again. The podcast is called Small Town Dicks, but it means detectives.
Yeah. You sure there's no double entendre
I don't know.
there, though?
Maybe he can fill us in. This is Detective Dan from the podcast Dan. Small Town Dicks with Yeardlley Smith of The Simpsons.
Nice.
Where they do true crime. So, Detective Dan, welcome to the Babylon Bee podcast. And is Small Town Dick a bad word?
First off, thank you, gentlemen, for having me on the show. Dicks is noir slang for detectives.
Okay.
And
is it like Dick Tracy?
Yes.
Okay.
So where I worked, and part of our show is we don't divulge exactly where I worked or
Right.
where our cases actually occur out of respect for the victims and the families of those victims to keep them somewhat anonymous. You know, in the day of social media, it's very easy to reach out and find people online, and we don't want people to reach out to the victims of our cases. So that's why we keep it anonymous. But yes, at our police department, we commonly refer to the detective pool as the Dicks.
Okay. All right.
But come on, you mean that a little...
You could be.
You mean it a little tongue-in-cheek,
You're funning.
right?
You're funning a little bit.
You say, yeah, all the dicks, and you kind of wink, right?
It depends on who the detective is, right?
I assume. So you are retired now, but you were a canine handler. You were in the violent crimes detective division. I got that all wrong. You were whatever, violent crimes. I read this wrong. You can tell us.
I started out on patrol and did a few years of that. Became a canine handler at one point, which was awesome. Such a fun job, and had a great dog who's since passed away, but incredible dog. It was a German Shepherd. And then after my canine, my stint on the canine team, I became a detective. Started out in financial crimes and worked my way up and eventually became a violent crimes detective.
Wow, and I would say I bet you have some stories, but I know you do because I listen to your show. And you guys
I think it's right now I've got 79 stories.
Wow, pretty crazy. Well, I don't know if your canine ever got in trouble with the police or with society at large.
Yeah, were the dogs racist or were they?
Yeah, did the dogs ever get in trouble for being too rough with the criminals? They seems like they get off easier than humans.
Yeah, the human's actually responsible for whatever the dog does. Okay. It's important to keep the training up. That's for sure.
I want to ask you, do you have any good dog stories? But we'll wait. We might have you in the subscription portion, so we might throw some of those in there if we can.
Sure.
So we wanted to talk to you about, because, I mean, obviously what's going on. We got riots in the streets. We got people talking about abolishing the police or defunding them. Cops just got canceled off the TV. I heard they're planning on editing John McClane out of all the Die Hard movies. Just kidding on that one. But there's a lot of crazy stuff happening.
I hope not. Those are classics.
Yeah. So what's your reaction to, first of all, and you guys did do an episode on this, but a brief, your take as a police officer on the George Floyd situation and what happened there.
So the first thing, I mean, the elephant in the room is the video, right?
Right.
You have to address the video. And when I watched that video for the first time in its entirety, I was shocked, I was outraged, I was upset, and I was ashamed. That tactic of putting your knee on a man's neck is nothing that's ever been taught in an academy. It's just not a tactic we use. And police officers are acutely aware of the dangers of certain positions that you put a suspect in. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this, that man was handcuffed. There are other ways to restrain someone who may still be kind of actively resisting, even though they're in handcuffs. Mm-hmm. Putting your knee on their neck is not one of them. Mm-hmm. And there's I've talked to a lot of police officers in the last 2 weeks, and not one of us, not one officer I've talked to has seen any justification for what we saw on that video. Hmm.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. I mean, the reaction from almost everybody, as far as I could see, was that it was a bad way to be. Like, you shouldn't be sitting on a guy's neck for that long. I mean, even all the way up to the president, people were upset about this video. It wasn't like a lot of them getting disputed or everybody's like trying to be Mr. Detective about it. I didn't see a lot about that on this one.
So yeah, I mean, on its face, it's horrible. And I want to clarify that putting your knee on a suspect's back is a tactic that we use, mm-hmm. but not the neck. We put our knee in between the shoulder blades to gain control of the upper body and the arm so we can handcuff someone. It makes it easier, mm-hmm. because it's very difficult to put someone in handcuffs that doesn't want to go in handcuffs.
I bet.
But putting your knee on someone's neck, that's not something that we teach. And rightly, he was arrested for it. The part that bothers me the most about that video is the look on his face while he's being videoed and he's got his knee on that man's neck. It screams indignation to me, mm-hmm. and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's punitive. And cops we don't dole out the punishment. That's the court. The court doles out the punishment. It's not our responsibility. It's not our job to dole out punishment. And he looked like he was trying to punish that man.
Yeah, it makes me curious. I saw that I believe, if I'm correct, his wife filed for divorce like a few days before that. Like he was in the middle of a divorce at the time of this, or did it happen after?
I don't know. And, I've heard theories that that's a financial decision to separate assets and that she would be kind of shielded from any civil lawsuits against him. I don't know. I mean, the other side of that is you just wonder, is that guy just a miserable guy? He's not nice. And this was the final straw.
Yeah. Yeah. Being out there, Mr. Grumpy Pants, went too far.
Yeah, I kind of see things like that, and you wonder if it's someone who's just under a lot of stress and they get caught up in the heat of the moment. And the problem is when you're in a life and death situation like you are all the time as a police officer, you don't get that.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't really get that leeway.
I could be wrong in this. I thought I read that she filed for divorce 3 days before the video came out, so I could be wrong, or before the day that he did that. I thought that he was in the middle of a divorce. But I just imagine. So I'm a father and I have kids. And sometimes you come home and you're just not in the mood for any crap.
Right.
And so when your kids resist arrest, you're rougher with them than usual. You're just like, okay, get the diaper on, And I wonder if a cop has those days, not that it's an excuse at all, but you have to be way more conscious of yourself when you got a guy resisting arrest and you're just sick of it. I assume you're dealing with some of the worst people in society. A lot of them are giant children a lot of the time. And how do you, and I guess I could ask you that, like, how do you maintain that level of composure and continue to see them as humans, even when they aren't acting like humans?
Not saying that George Floyd was one of the worst people in society.
Not saying him, but I'm just saying that's your life as a cop.
A lot of the people that police.
Yeah, that's a good question. And all I can say is we are held to a higher standard, and it can never be personal out there. Mm-hmm. Well, it can be. When you're fighting with me, it's personal. When I get the handcuffs on you, it's not personal anymore. I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to dust you off. I'm going to ask you if you're okay. Mm-hmm. And it's not personal at that point. But cops are humans, and humans are fallible, and they're not perfect. And I think it's easy to look back on a situation and Monday morning quarterback it without knowing the context of, like you said, I mean, the man's going through a divorce, and I'm not making excuses for him.
Yeah.
I want people to understand that there are a lot, financial trouble is a huge thing with a lot of police officers. Divorce, the divorce rate on police officers is, everybody knows that cops get divorced a lot. Financial trouble, divorce. You never know what else is going on in his life. Maybe he's cheating on his wife. Maybe his wife is cheating on him. There are a lot of factors that go into that, but the bottom line is you can't take that stuff that's going on in your personal life. You can't take it out onto the street when you've got a badge on. Can't happen.
So one of the things that people are bringing up a lot in the discussion of this George Floyd thing is, systemic racism and how much that's true in the police force, how much that exists in the police force. So we're wondering if, I don't know, a lot of the picture we're getting painted is like, cops go out and how many black people can I arrest today? That's, yeah. I was just wondering if you had any experiences, on the force with that kind of thing.
What's your perspective when you hear the people talking about that? Have you seen racism in police work, or what is the truth to it? What are the lies to it? What do you mean?
Well, I can't speak for other departments because I've never been a part of another department. I was a part of my department,
right?
And where I worked, to call it systemic to me without empirical data that it's actually a thing. It's just a lazy argument to me, and it's a blanket term that gets thrown around a lot. Yeah. I'm not naive to think that there are no racist cops out there. Yeah, I'm sure there are. I'm certain of it. In my experience, and that's all I can speak to, is I have not encountered that. I've encountered good men and women who actually want to go out and make a difference. And on every call they go on, it's about the greater good. And sometimes that doesn't even involve arresting somebody when you're justified in doing that. What's the greater good? How can I most greatly impact this situation? And some officers lose sight of that. Discretion is a thing in law enforcement that some people agree with, some people don't. But there are so many factors that go into any situation. I never once went on a call thinking, I hope this person is black so I can arrest them. Yeah. And I don't know any cop that I ever dealt with, that I worked with, that would ever say that. And I worked with African-American colleagues. I didn't see it where I worked. So I can only speak to that.
Yeah. So how about all this abolish the police stuff going on? I don't know. I don't even know what that would look like if we got rid of police. And a lot of people saying that's hyperbole, but there's literally people, we just saw, there's a video in Minneapolis. There's a giant crowd commanding the mayor to abolish the police. Will you do it right now? And he says, I can't just completely wipe out the police. I can't. And so they made him just walk of shame out of there. And, everyone's booing him. So there's people that really think that if you're calling, there's an article we just read this, or no, it was actually on the news. She was asked, if we get rid of the police, who do I call when there's someone broken in my house? She says, well, you just have to recognize that you're coming from a place of privilege when you say that. And I was like,
I did see that.
Did you see that?
The Minneapolis City Council or something.
Yeah. So really? So she's not just some blogger?
That's a head scratcher right there.
All right. Yeah. I'm curious about your reaction to all this talk. I mean, what's it even look like if they're, because I know that LAPD, they've taken a bunch of money from, a lot of them are doing defunding. So even that, what's that look like?
So, I think people would be surprised that a lot of cops actually do support some defunding of our police department. As long as you reallocate and redirect those funds to programs that are going to address problems that police officers have been now directed to address: the homeless, substance abuse, people in mental crisis. Those are three things right there that the police have been forced to have to encounter out on the street over the years. And we don't specialize in that. And I think, the citizens of the United States need to, at some point, decide what they want the police to actually do. Do you want us to be crisis workers? Do you want us to be social workers? Do you want us to be child and juvenile workers? Do you want us to just be warriors out there and handle only violent crime? Because you're asking us to wear a lot of hats, and when you divvy up those kinds of skills, you're going to have some people are going to be lacking in certain areas. Yeah. And you don't get, when you call the police, you don't get to say, hey, I would like a police officer who specializes in this to show up.
Yeah.
That's just not how it works. You get sent to a call because you're a free unit. You're not actually on a call right now. And you show up and you deal with whatever it is you deal with when you get there. And it's really easy to Monday morning quarterback a lot of decisions that are made out there. But the defunding, if you're gonna defund the police, please put that money into a program that, you have dedicated people who respond to mental health crisis. You have dedicated people that respond to homelessness calls or calls dealing with the homeless, children. If you can do that, police officers will say, thank you. That's off our plate now, and we can concentrate on things that we're actually designed to do, is go out and catch bad guys.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a good perspective on that, because I think there's been a lot of reaction to, we're going to defund the police and put out more social workers. And on his face, that sounds kind of funny, like social workers patrolling the streets with their clipboards or whatever. But when you put it in perspective like that, that makes a lot of sense.
And I just want, it is hyperbole. I want you to actually define what exactly you're asking for.
Yeah, for abolishing.
And then we can have a conversation when you define exactly what you're asking for. The actually abolishing or dismantling of these police departments. There are some examples out there of departments that were abolished. Camden County in New Jersey did it a few years ago, and they've had great success. They stripped it all the way down to the frame and then built it back up with new police officers and new mandates. It was a more community. They worked hand in hand with the community on addressing actual needs of the community, and it's been a huge success. They've had a huge drop in violent crime there. I mean, crime's never going to just disappear.
Right.
The only way for you to make crime to disappear is to decriminalize everything. Because then it's not a crime anymore, right?
Right. Good idea.
People are going to still
libertarian, right?
People are still going to take advantage of circumstance and victimize people. It's just human nature.
Right.
Well, with the talks of defunding, there's been a lot of focus on like the militarization of the police. So should cops have tanks?
Yeah, what do you think? Should cops have tanks? Do they have tanks?
Well, that's what they always say is cops have tanks, but they kind of pull up in these SWAT vehicles and they go, the
tank.
Cops pulled up in a tank. So
we have armored vehicles. We don't have tanks. That would be fun though. Just on training purposes alone, just to go out and fire the big gun. I wish we didn't need armored vehicles, honestly. I wish we didn't need them. But if you look at situations, the San Bernardino mass shooting that happened a few years ago, if police officers didn't have any armor, that situation may have turned out different. It may have lasted longer. We just did a case on our podcast where a man set a fire to his house to draw firemen into range, and he began shooting at him.
Wow.
And the reason why that incident really was accelerated is because we had access to an armored vehicle that could buy some real estate, and that's a law enforcement term that we use. It's we're gaining ground and trying to get closer to the bad guys so we can get eyes on them. So that armored vehicle really gave us an advantage in that situation. Active shooters, there are a million reasons why we need an armored vehicle, and we don't use them that often. I think the problem is that some departments rely on them too much, And I think you have to really pick your battles, so to speak, with that armored vehicle. You can't. It just can't be the automatic default that we're going to go to the armored vehicle, because the optics of it for the general public,
right,
it's not good.
We had some ideas of things you could replace the police with. Maybe you can give us your quick analysis on these. Like Portland has Antifa, so they don't even really need cops, right? They could just have Antifa take over, wipe out fascism.
I would love to see what that looks like. A lot of street art, if you want to call it that.
Street art, vegan coconut milkshake splatter art.
I mean, I always thought the concept of RoboCop was pretty good. We could get some, just some drones flying around or something.
It's just cops who have passed on, and they are now inside of robotic shells.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they have no hopes or dreams.
I actually met the guy who played RoboCop. Very nice man. Yeah.
Nice.
And I couldn't stop seeing RoboCop when I was looking at him.
Yeah. Nice.
And the voice.
But there's also the Ed 209, the giant robot and it's known mainly for shooting CEOs and things. So people might like that. I don't know. Raccoons. There's a ton of those, and they're very violent and aggressive. So he could train them. Maybe cops could have a gang of raccoons with them helping out.
Just an army of trash pandas.
Yeah. They got great hands.
Yeah.
Well, we were thinking maybe that we could have like a traveling band of hippies that just drive around.
Offering free hugs.
They just offer free hugs. They sing John Lennon's Imagine.
Uh-huh.
You know, if there's a crime, they just call them in to kind of sing. And I don't know what your take is on that, but
Imagine solves everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we were playing. We actually did an article. We do satirical articles, kind of like The Onion. We did one where police are being retrained by slam poets, socially conscious slam poets. I was thinking if you could throw toxic waste into the sewers and just have hope that one day the Ninja Turtles would arise, that might be good.
Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, sorry about that. Sorry I didn't do that.
Tell our jokes real quick. Who's your favorite fictional police officer?
Yeah.
Well, it's got to be Axe Cop, right?
Oh, man.
Wow.
Did your homework.
I was just curious, what do cops think of Axe Cop? I've had some cops who don't like him.
I was unaware of Axe Cop until you and Yeardley met and started working together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Axe Cop he's problematic. You want to talk about police brutality?
Yeah. Yeah. His technique is to remove criminals' heads.
He just comes in the situation, I'll chop your head off.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the show Southland that used to be on television, and it's been canceled for a few years now, but Southland was actually a pretty decent look at police work. You could tell that they had some technical advisors on that show that had been on the street.
Really?
And the same with the movie End of Watch, Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Hollywood takes some liberties with the amount of shootings that they get in and all that. But it gave you, there were some moments in that movie that were very authentic and that resonated with me.
Cool. So that'd have been an interesting list to go down, like fictional cops and get his opinion on them.
What do you see as like the most common misconception, maybe from Hollywood or just that you see out in the public of what the police do?
To me, and this is really in the last couple of weeks, it's become even more apparent to me that the general public doesn't understand that every police department out there is basically an island. You have your own leadership structure. You have your own culture. You have your own training policies. You have your own hiring policies. And that, to me, I think the public generally believes that every day that all police departments in the country get on a Zoom call together and say, what are we going to do today? It's just, that's not true. Mm-hmm. One department that is in one city and the neighboring city, they could have two completely different structures to them and cultures to them. And I want the general public to understand that, like, when you see, I mean, Minneapolis PD right now is really easy to pick on, right? There are probably incredible people that work for that. I guarantee there are incredible people that work for that organization. I just want people to know that every department is different, and you don't get caught in the trap of lumping every police department and every police officer together, because you're basically doing the same thing that you're accusing the police of doing. Is
Right.
lumping and saying that there's that we're racist, and because that's just not the case. It's and I'm certain that there are examples of it, and people may hear this and they'll say this cop is naive and he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm just speaking from my experience and from what the little corner of the world that I worked in.
Right.
It's almost like the world is nuanced and complex.
Yeah.
Right.
Will he change the name, the meaning of the word chauvinist?
Oh,
It'll be even worse now.
Yeah. Not all cops are chauvinists. Yeah. Chauvinists.
Do cops really like donuts?
Is that true?
Is that true?
Scones and lattes, really. It's not coffee and donuts so much. Yeah,
I
I
like
love
a
a good
scone.
Oh,
I just feel like
a nice
scones are overrated.
blueberry scone. You can't beat that.
Not all cops.
not all cops.
Well, let's get into some fun stuff. You know what? We'll do the let's plug you now, and then we'll do a little bit of fun stuff for the subscriber portion. So,
Okay.
Small Town Dicks is an awesome podcast. My recommendation to people about it and why I like it so much. There's kind of like two kinds of true crime podcasts, and a lot of people like true crime podcasts. You either have the really dry, like investigation discovery, where there's like a guy with a deep voice and it's super produced, or you have ones that are kind of like put on by, I guess they're improv comics or something, and they're laughing the whole time about murder. And I have a tough time with those ones, but they're really popular.
That's tough for me too, especially when you're speaking to survivors.
Yeah, and you guys are talking about the real cases.
Yeah. We were there. We investigated them. I smelled the smells. I saw the body on the floor, and the thing about our podcast is we really we're reverent to the victims,
Right.
and the families, because and that's part of the reason why we change names and locations and keep some of it anonymous, is because out of respect for those people. But what our podcast really does is we try to show these cases through the lens of the police officer who actually investigated it.
Right.
So not all the cases are my brother and I. Actually, very few of the cases are actually my brother and I investigated them. But a lot of them are cases that I became aware of or that my colleagues have done. And we talked to them. I should say that my twin brother, Dave, was a sex crimes and child abuse detective. And he's the other host on the show, along with Yeardlley and I. We're all we're a three-headed monster.
Yeah, that's what's great is you have Yeardlley, who's kind of an outsider voice, asking questions. And then, but the thing about the cops on the show that you have on, and you guys, you're a little more real. You guys swear, warning to our, delicately eared listeners, but you guys are you talk as you would talk, and it feels very real. So I really like it. It's also really well produced, though. You guys play interviews, you play interrogations, 911 calls. It's really well done. So highly recommended. You guys don't need our help. You guys already have a huge audience. So
you see a huge spike from this.
Yeah, huge spike.